Welcome to Cinecaps. Today I will show you a drama, action film from 2013 titled Snitch. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. College student Jason is unwillingly convinced by his friend Craig to accept a candy shipment to his house, in exchange for a substantial sum of money. The next day, as the delivery guy arrives with the package and Jason can't help himself but be on edge the whole time. After receiving it, he opens it up in his room, but once he lifts the candy he's shocked to find a tracking device. Suddenly the DEA bursts into his house and Jason makes his escape out the window. Units scattered all throughout the neighborhood start a chase against Jason. He runs a few blocks until he is backed into a corner and cuffed. Meanwhile, John, a proud business owner, who doesn't mind getting his hands dirty, and also a happily married man with a daughter, receives a call and rushes to the police station. There, his ex-wife delivers the distressing news that their son, Jason, is in serious trouble. The lawyer informs them that their son was found in possession of a large quantity of MDMA and is now facing charges of intent to distribute. Jason tried to explain that his friend Craig is behind it. But Craig was arrested trying to mail the pills and agreed to work with the government. Basically, Craig set up Jason and now he faces a minimum 10-year sentence. In the courtroom, the parents are shocked to see their child stripped of his future. John confides in his wife. He was expecting that something like this would happen to Jason. He's a brat, but it still hurts him. At the correctional facility, the lawyer lays out a deal. If Jason assists the government in identifying other suppliers, they'll reduce his sentence from 10 years to 2. However, Jason lacks the necessary contacts. The lawyer suggests Jason set someone up, as Craig did to him. But Jason refuses to stoop so low. The lawyer tries to explain that there is no other choice and his parents tell him that it's the only way, but Jason sticks to his morals. Raises the question if John would ever sell out his friends for his own benefit. After making a few calls, John manages to arrange a meeting with the U.S. attorney. But unfortunately for him, she doesn't have kids and can't sympathize with John. It's the law and she won't bend. John goes to the prison to see his son, who took a horrible beating. John wants to know more, but Jason just sentimentally starts to tell about all the things he did to get on his dad's nerves. Jason hated that he had a new family. In a shaky voice Jason reveals that he never intended to sell that stuff. He could have just refused the package. As Jason starts to whimper, John tells him not to cry, not in prison. John promises to get him out of here, witnessing that other prisoners are keeping a close watch on his boy. John takes matters into his own hands, delving deeper into research on cartels and the law. With a camera positioned on the passenger seat, he cruises through alleys in search of a dealer to set up. He rolls up to a gang and asks for coke, but his attempt backfires as he steps outside and is beaten up by the boys and robbed by the gunpoint, with the police arriving as his saving grace. Released from the police station, John finds himself back at the U.S. Attorney's office. Once again, he pleads with her to offer him some assistance. Finally, she relents and explains that he'll need to find someone dealing in large quantities of the special substance with intent to distribute, and then she can provide help for his son. Back at work, John goes through all his workers' applications, looking for someone who has committed felonies, when he lands on Daniel, who has been convicted twice on distribution. Later that day, John stalks Daniel and happily offers him a ride. At a diner John comes clean about his intentions. He wants Daniel to introduce him to the right people, offering $5,000 for his help and additional $5,000 if his plan succeeds. But Daniel can't do it. Thinking about his family he would rather pretend this conversation never happened. Following him outside, John increases it to $20,000. But Daniel keeps walking. Returning to his block, Daniel spots his son with some essays. Taking him around the corner he tells him to never lay eyes on his son again. Turns out Daniel is the shot caller for the East Side. At home, as his wife is going for another night shift, Daniel gives his son a pep talk to not hang out around people like that. He wants what's best for his son. The next day, Daniel waits for John outside his office. He takes him to a place he knows and warns John, no BS. Just as Daniel goes to make preparations, John turns on the voice recorder. Daniel meets with his old acquaintance, Malik, someone who is in that type of business. After catching up, he explains that he's here to introduce him to someone. The bodyguard lets John in and the whole house goes silent. As John sits down, Malik immediately holds him at gunpoint, testing his reaction and wondering why he's here. John calmly explains that the economy has gone downhill and he wants to keep his business afloat. He offers transportation with minimal risk, explaining how he would get it done. Malik likes John's idea, but he will do business with him only if he will be the driver of the first load and John agrees. As John is escorted outside, Malik senses something fishy about the deal, instructing Daniel to ride shotgun with John. Malik emphasizes that if he gets caught, Daniel will also face consequences. Alternatively, they can agree to act as if this conversation never occurred. In the car, Daniel explains that he will call the shots for the operation and wants his money up front. Without wasting a moment, John presents the recording to the U.S. attorney. She agrees to use it and reduce Jason's sentence to 1 year. This is the best deal she can offer. Agent Cooper will be his anchor in this operation. Rewatching the old recordings of Jason, John believes he did the right thing for his family. Daniel feels stressed about the job. He had left that part of his life behind him, but he's back at it. He hasn't been truthful to his wife either, mentioning that John just gave him more responsibilities. In the early morning, Cooper notifies John that they will place wires on him and bug his warehouse and truck. His best advice is just to be himself, a family man that tries to stay afloat. As Daniel arrives, John gets the truck and they are ready to head out. Their destination is El Paso, right next to the border, over 1,000 miles away. John tries to get to know Daniel better, but he just wants to keep it business as usual. Finally arriving at their destination in a junkyard, they are met by several armed men and start unloading the bags with cement, where they still stash the Big C. Meanwhile, they are being closely watched. After concealing the Big C in the cement bags, they load them back into the truck. As they're wrapping up, a rival gang suddenly appears, triggering a shootout that ensnares John and Daniel. Fearing for their lives, they hurriedly retreat to the truck. John quickly throws the truck into reverse, colliding with a heap of trash before speeding through a pile of cans and crashing through the gates, and bumping into a few cars along the way. The DEA gets info on the shootout, but decides not to interfere to not sabotage their Malik operation. The boss of the junkyard gives Malik a call, telling that John handled the situation well. Malik is glad to hear it. This will take their operations to the next level. John and Daniel safely made their way back to their warehouse, but Malik wants to change the meeting spot, asking for them to get the product straight to him. This puts a dent in their plan, and on the pretense of taking a leak, John lets Daniel handle the load, while he makes a phone call to Cooper. Seeing the landline active, Daniel suspects something is going on. As John steps out of his office, Daniel confronts him, demanding the truth. John fabricates a story about calling his wife. Unconvinced, Daniel gives John one final opportunity to come clean. John reiterates his tale, insisting it was his wife he called, arranging for the caller ID to show the warehouse number to reassure her of his hard work. Yet, Daniel remains skeptical. Throughout the whole ride to the new meeting spot, Daniel is on high alert, noticing anything that is out of the ordinary, suspecting that something is amiss. They arrive at the new meeting spot. It's already crawling with the DEA agents from all sides. Handing Malik the product, he makes John take a sniff and then hands him the money for a job well done. Listening to the conversation, Cooper finds out that Malik wants John to have a sit down with his supplier, earning him much more money. Just as the gang starts to leave, Cooper orders his men to stand down. John was expecting the DEA to interfere, but is fazed that they let Malik go. The next day, John confronts the U.S. attorney and Cooper, expressing his anger that they had a deal. Cooper explains that they have a bigger fish to catch. John angrily walks out and the attorney questions Cooper's judgment call, thinking letting Malik go was a mistake. At work, Daniel sees John act suspicious, and asking his co-worker for his car, decides to tail him. Daniel sees John go to the police station. There, John's ex-wife tells him that they are unable to see Jason. He's in the infirmary with 36 stitches after being heavily beaten up. His ex-wife begs John to help their son. Outside, Daniel confronts him. At the slightest mention of his son, he figures that John made a deal with the government. Daniel makes a point that it's the cartel John's messing with. Both of their families will be on the chopping block once they find out. Making his way home, Daniel is confronted by his wife. Finding his stack of cash, she knows he's back on the dark path. She breaks down because he broke his promise to her. He calms her down and tells her to pack their bags. They are in danger. Returning home, John finds Malik's car parked outside. Malik has settled in comfortably, waiting to escort John to the significant meeting he promised. They drive to a heavily guarded car repair shop, where John encounters the same individual from the junkyard, Benicio. However, only John is permitted to meet the supplier. After undergoing a thorough security check, John gains access to the man in charge, Pintra. Pintra proposes that John smuggle their product into Mexico, offering a payment of $250,000 for the task. Should the operation succeed, Pintra promises to elevate John to a position within his inner circle. Benicio hands John a burner, telling him to be ready to depart tomorrow at 10 a.m. From this point onward, John works for Pintra directly. This creates another problem for John, Malik, who's still unaware that John can't work for him anymore. Arriving back home, he quickly calls his wife, who distances herself from John. She's scared and doesn't want to endanger their child. The following day, John rendezvous with the U.S. attorney and Cooper, who assure him that Malik or anyone else won't uncover any information about Jason or their agreement. Jason's file is safeguarded. However, when they discover that John met with Pintra, the attorney becomes grave. Pintra is the right-hand man of the cartel, signifying the seriousness of the situation. Moreover, upon learning that John must transport something into Mexico, the attorney swiftly deduces that it likely involves hundreds of millions in cash. Cooper borrows the attorney for a private conversation, mentioning that if John crosses that border tomorrow, he most likely will be killed. But she believes it's a small price to pay. Once John returns back to her office, she suddenly acts friendly towards him, but he's not buying it. Since she didn't honor her part of the deal about Malik, he wants Jason out immediately if he is to go through with this job. She plans to seize the money and get to Pintra, nothing less. Cooper confronts John in the parking lot, warning him that cartels abuse guys like him. They never use their own people. He will most likely end up in a barrel full of acid. In the world of cartels, loyalty is fleeting, and they routinely rotate their couriers to evade detection. John goes to visit his son, giving this information to the guard. Jason looks terribly beaten up, but still maintains a smile. John admits that he admires him for that, not taking the easy way out and selling out his friends. He admits that he couldn't have shown such strength of character if he were in his son's shoes. For John, his son embodies true integrity and resilience. John visits Daniel and thanks him for not ratting him out to Malik and apologizes for putting him and his family in danger. He won't let any side dictate their fate and needs Daniel help to achieve that. After acquiring a gun, John receives the pickup address and heads in that direction, with the DEA monitoring his every movement. But under a bridge, John swaps cars and after 15 minutes of not moving, Cooper finds out that John bailed on them. John has a plan on how to get things done with Daniel's help, who's sitting across Malik's house. Arriving at the location, Benicio leads him to a pile of cash and after loading it up, explains the route to take to avoid suspicion. They will tail him. Meanwhile, the lady guard from before relays the information about John visiting his son in prison and this information quickly is relayed to Pintra. Meanwhile, Daniel neutralizes the guard outside Malik's place and swiftly makes his way in, shooting up two more. He and Malik have a standoff, with him opening wide and shooting Malik in the stomach. All he needs from him is Pintra's number, sending it to John. John calls Cooper, telling him swiftly to track his number. Just then Benicio gets information that John is an informant and orders John to stop the truck. John rams into Benicio's car and relays Pintra's cell number to Cooper to track him down. Benicio opens fire on John, who retaliates with his shotgun. Both get injured, but John manages to stand his ground. Cooper has men already inbound to John's position, while his crew storms Pintra's home, but it's empty with the cell left on the table. Luckily Cooper spots Pintra and a passing car. The DEA quickly manages to stop him in his tracks and apprehend Pintra. Meanwhile, Benicio's crew shoots out John's tires to stop him in his tracks, but two of the three pursuing cars are rammed off the road by John, but as he rams the third one, his container goes sideways and flips his truck over, coming to a halt. Barely regaining his composure, John sees a man approaching and attempts to load his shotgun, but as his vision comes back into focus, he's relieved to see it's one of the agents. He's safe. The DEA finds Malik dead in his house and Daniel is reunited with his family, promising them they are safe now. The U.S. attorney announces to the world that they captured a huge player for the cartel and seized a large sum of money, all thanks to John, whose family will be placed in witness protection. Daniel refused witness protection, but thanks to the huge bust and him playing an instrumental role, the government awarded him with $100,000. The next morning, Jason is let out of the prison, so they can finally go home. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this.